Hello lovelies, I'm terrible at pimping my stuff, so here I am, pimping my stuff. Please like, subscribe, and most important of all, share, so that people can discover me and all the wonders that I offer. The stage is very much set for massive political and social upheaval around the world. This has been brewing since at least 2008, and many of the off-ramps from that upheaval have been squandered or exploited or twisted into something that they're not, without any real successful attempt to address the underlying issues beneath it. At times like these, things either move in a more egalitarian or a more totalitarian direction. The preferable one seems quite obvious. Either left-wing labour movements, egalitarian movements, and so forth extract more democratisation and redistribution from the ruling class, more social investment. Either that, or one form or another of authoritarianism and strongmen take hold, feeding people's paranoia and setting them against one another. The crises we face are manifold, and many of them seem insoluble. Some are short-term, some are medium-term, some are long-term. We have the war in Ukraine. We have the blame game of Russia, the toxic nostalgia, the fuel crisis that they've engendered. Russia appears to be very much playing the part of 1920s and 1930s Germany in our little play. We're all under increasing ecological strain due to climate change, and it's reaching the put up or shut up stage where we either restructure our societies and take big, serious, expensive steps, or we fail and collapse. There has been a total capture by hardline capitalistic forces of government across the developed nations, in one form or another. There is now a greater division between rich and poor than there was during the French Revolution, and we all know how that ended. The left is largely absent in the ruling class, despite the re-emergence of grassroots labour organisation and union action. Unfortunately, many of those unions have also been distracted and turned away from real, serious material issues into irrelevancies in the same way as left-wing political parties have. There is this paralysis in the ruling class, with the left/liberal groups more concerned with these immaterial issues and increasingly esoteric rights issues rather than material ones. Wealth, food, heating, shelter, things that genuinely matter to people, things that make an immediate difference to them. The right has learned again how to be populist. It promises a great deal. It says the things the left doesn't seem to dare to anymore. It promises these things but never delivers them, and heaps blame instead on immigration and others of various kinds, conspiratorial forces, satanic cabals of baby eaters, blood drinkers, some sort of conspiracy to turn everyone trans. They know it's not true, but they exploit people's fears and irrationalities to get votes, to get power, and in doing so talk themselves into increasingly nasty corners. Here in the United Kingdom, we now have the furthest right government since Margaret Thatcher, arguably further right than Margaret Thatcher. We have a Chancellor and a prime minister openly talking up trickle-down economics, which don't work and have never worked. Even right-wing economists now seem to realise and understand that these don't work. But these are ideologues. The reason it doesn't work is that the rich already have everything that they need. They don't need to spend more money, so they sit on any additional wealth that they accrue. Similarly, giving money to corporations doesn't lead to increased wages for people or investment or restructuring. It tends to lead to stock buybacks, not investment or expansion. We've seen this happen again and again. Poor people spend money that they're given. This is a concept called the velocity of money. They spend it on things that they need or have been waiting to spend money on for a very long time. They are consumers. They consume, and the money rapidly moves through society, getting recaptured by the government through taxes and going on to feed those big companies anyway. But at least it makes a material difference to the poor while it is being spent. This has a stimulating effect in a way that giving money to the rich never does. Our current government is refusing to windfall tax the energy companies who have gouged people during the energy crisis. Instead, the government has decided that the public will just pay the bills over the longer term. The government has borrowed massive amounts of money to pay off the energy companies, which we will then repay through tax in the forthcoming years, despite the enormous profits that the energy companies have extracted already. Where will this money come from in the end? Well, it seems cuts to benefits, more austerity, things that kept the recession going, the Great Recession, when there should have been spending to lift us out of it. Instead, they're going to pick on the poorest and most vulnerable, the long-term unemployed, the sick, people who don't matter to them. And there is no way to remove this government, at least for 2 more years. I'd love to be proven wrong. Perhaps what's left of the One Nation Tories can rebel to such an extent that they bring down the government and force a general election, but I doubt it. People like being in power far too much, and Labour, currently in some polls a full 30% ahead, are they the party to make a difference anymore, or is it just going to be that they'll screw us over less? And so long as they have that high an advantage in the polls, I don't think any Conservative Member of Parliament who wants to keep their seat will be too keen on a general election. They could be reduced to 60 seats if that poll reflects reality. So yes, at times like this, societies tend to either fall into totalitarianism or egalitarianism, and one of those two definitely seems preferable. How did Britain avoid this before? In World War II, Mosley's black shirt fascists were not defeated on Cable Street in the great battle that went on there between Unions, the Jewish community, and Mosley's black shirts. But rather it was defeated after Cable Street through social housing, social investment, greater egalitarianism in deprived areas. Was dealt its death blow by the outbreak of war and people's nationalism setting them against fascism. The old school Labour movement has proven remedies for the problems we're facing, that social investment, that egalitarianism, that redistribution. But the old school Labour movement doesn't have power at the moment. The left-wing political parties are horribly bourgeois. They aren't interested in the material issues that the working class and underclass are facing. And the right is doubling down on the inequalities and paranoia that gave rise to fascism in the first half of the 20th century. And we've seen fascism, proto-fascism, neo-fascism, whatever you want to call it, emerge even in the more left-leaning European countries that should know better. Poland, Hungary, and now Italy, as well as Greece to an extent, all show that this is a real and pressing issue. Even across the water in America, the Trumpist populism and the Christian nationalism following in its wake present a real and material threat to people's freedoms. And America is not interested in egalitarianism, is not interested in social investment, and so is horribly vulnerable to genuine fascism, something America has never experienced directly. And fascist as an insult is almost as overused as communist over there. But while it may not have applied to these populist and right-wing groups thus far, it's starting to apply. There is so much paranoia against skin-suit communism that outright, undisguised fascism and Christian nationalism passes without serious comment or criticism in mainstream media. Perhaps this is because that wartime generation has passed. Perhaps not, they always had a nationalistic streak, a certain amount of xenophobia, but perhaps that's it. Or perhaps it is just that the genuine left wing has abdicated the field and allowed the right to make their weird accusations, their conspiracy theories and so on unchallenged, without making arguments for material change for people, for economic change for people. It was tragedy in the 20th century, and now it's farce because we should know better. But in its horrendous effect on people, it's still going to be tragedy. The left, the real left, has solutions that we know work, but there is no will to implement them. Unless we change. Zang.
I don't often make explicitly political games, but the Little Grey Book is one of them. It's a parable about this social media panopticon we've all made, where everyone is always watching each other for anyone who steps out of line in any way. And the Little Grey Book is about the inescapability of upsetting someone. It's a one-trick pony, but it's a good one-trick pony. Available at DriveThruRPG and post-mort.com.
Well, I look at it myself as the beginning, really, of an exploration. That's the reason we're exploring. You don't know what you'll run into on an exploration. What the sky looks like, what the stars look like. Do they still twinkle, or are they a steady light when you get outside the atmosphere?